Charles Starkweather, a teenage killer with James Dean looks.
Sheriff's deputy arrived. A 14-year-old girl rushed from the car and ran toward the officer. She was terrified, confused, and desperate to get away from the armed man. The young man abandoned the struggle, jumped into the Packard, and sped toward Douglas. Police Chief Bob Ainsley and Sheriff Earl Heflin joined the pursuit. The Packard raced through the area at speeds reported to exceed 100 miles per hour. Officers fired toward the fleeing vehicle. A bullet shattered one of its windows, sending glass across. Or was she another victim of Charles Stark? At one point, he collected garbage. He developed a strong interest in firearms, knives, and cars. He also became fascinated with actor James Dean, whose screen image represented youthful defiance. Charles copied the hairstyle, clothing, and attitude. The performance gave him some person carrying it learns to manage it. Charles did not. The anger became part of his personality. He was not merely frustrated by his position in life. He seemed to believe that other people had no right to judge, restrict, or deny him anything. This is one of the most important behavioral warnings in the case. Pain does not automatically make someone dangerous. Neither does social rejection. But when pain is combined with entitlement, uncontrolled anger, access to weapons, and a belief that everyone else is responsible, the risk can change. Charles still needed someone who would confirm the version of himself he wanted to believe. He found that person in a girl, several years younger than him. Her name was Caril Ann Fugate. Caril was approximately 13 years old when her relationship with Charles began. He was around 18. The age difference mattered. Charles had greater freedom, more physical power, and more experience. He could drive. He had jobs. He owned or had access to weapons. To a young teenager, those qualities could look like independence. He reportedly taught Caril how to drive, and the two became almost inseparable. Her family did not approve. Caril lived with her mother, Velda Bartlett, her stepfather, Marion Bartlett, and her 2-year-old half-sister, Betty Jean. They saw Charles as a poor influence and wanted the relationship to end. To Charles, their opposition was not a reasonable effort to protect a young girl. It was another insult. The relationship also contained a warning that appears in many abusive situations: the creation of a private world in which only the couple supposedly understands each other. A controlling partner may describe friends and relatives as enemies. Concern is presented as jealousy. Boundaries become persecution. Attempts to protect someone are treated as proof that outsiders want to destroy the relationship. The younger or more isolated person may begin defending the controlling partner, even when the relationship is damaging them. Whether Caril fully shared Charles's hostility or was gradually influenced by him remains disputed. What is clear is that her family recognized a problem. But recognizing danger does not always mean a family knows how to stop it. The Bartletts could object. They could order Charles away. They could argue with Caril. They could not control what Charles had decided the relationship meant. For him, Caril had become more than a girlfriend. She was evidence that he mattered. Anyone who threatened the relationship was threatening the identity he had built around it. By late 1957, he had already crossed a line that Caril's family may not have known existed. He had killed a man. On November 30th, 1957, Charles visited a servant knowledge of what he had done. Then, on January 21st, 1958, he went to Caril's home. By the end of that day, 3 members of her family were dead. The precise order of events at the Bartlett residence remains contested because the surviving accounts do not agree. What is established is that Charles killed Marion and Velda Bartlett and 2-year-old Betty Jean. The bodies were concealed in outbuildings on the property. Charles later gave several statements, and they were not consistent about whether Caril witnessed the killings. Caril said she returned from school and found Charles alone in the house. According to her account, he told her that her family had been taken somewhere else. He allegedly warned that they would be killed if she did not cooperate. This claim would become the foundation of her defense. But there was an immediate problem. Caril remained inside the house with Charles for several days. Relatives and visitors came looking for the family. Caril turned them away. A message was placed on the door stating that everyone was sick and visitors should stay away. To the prosecution, this showed participation. To Caril's defenders, they also weakened later attempts to explain every murder as an uncontrolled reaction. Charles could prepare equipment, think about travel, obtain supplies, and take steps designed to avoid capture. The pair drove toward the rural property of August Meyer, an older man Charles knew. The 6 days hostile society. August Meyer had not bullied Charles at school. He had not opposed the relationship with Caril. He became useful because he had supplies, money, and a weapon. After leaving Meyer's property, Charles's car became trapped and had to be abandoned. Charles and Caril continued on foot, carrying weapons and stolen items. That was when Robert Jensen and Caril King encountered them. Robert was 17. Caril was 16. They were not hunting fugitives. They were not officers. They were two teenagers who saw people beside the road and offered assistance. A simple act of kindness placed them in danger. Charles asked for a ride into Bennett. Once inside the vehicle, he took control. Robert was ordered to drive in different directions before being forced back toward the abandoned schoolhouse site. During the journey, Charles took his money and announced that he intended to take the car. Robert and Caril were then directed toward the storm cellar. Charles shot and killed them. Their bodies were left inside, and the entrance was covered with boards and debris. The prosecution later focused heavily on Robert's murder because the circumstances demonstrated more than a sudden act of rage. Charles had time to make decisions. He entered the car armed. He directed Robert along multiple roads. He robbed him. He returned to a remote location. He forced both teenagers from the vehicle. He concealed the bodies and took the car. Each step required another choice. This sequence became central when the defense argued that Charles lacked the mental ability to deliberate and plan. There was also the question of Caril. Court records state that Charles and Caril were in the rear seat and that each held a gun. Prosecutors argued that her armed presence prevented Robert and Caril from resisting or escaping. Caril denied willingly assisting Charles. This is where the hostage explanation becomes especially difficult. Even if Caril had believed her family was alive when she left Lincoln, she had now witnessed Charles kill August Meyer. She was beside him when two teenagers were abducted. Could she have escaped? Could she have warned them? Could she have turned a weapon on Charles? Those questions sound simple when asked decades later. They may not have felt simple to a 14-year-old standing beside a man who had just killed again. A weapon does not automatically give a frightened person control. Holding a gun is not the same as being psychologically capable of using it, especially against someone who has convinced you that resistance will lead to more deaths. But Robert and Caril were also teenagers. They had no reason to understand the danger until Charles and Caril were already inside their car. Whatever Caril's emotional state, her presence may have helped Charles control them. That is the painful tension at the heart of this case. A person can be frightened and still contribute to someone else's death. A person can be controlled and still make choices that harm others. Victimhood and legal responsibility do not always fit into separate boxes. Robert Jensen and Caril King stopped because they believed two people needed help. The lesson is not that kindness should disappear. It is that roadside assistance must be offered with caution. Remaining inside a locked vehicle, keeping distance, contacting emergency services, and avoiding transportation of unknown armed individuals are not acts of selfishness. They are safety decisions. Robert and Caril could not have known what had already happened. Charles did. After killing them, he took Robert's car and returned to Lincoln. He was no longer simply running away from a crime scene. He was moving between crime scenes, using each victim to obtain what he needed for the next stage. Charles and Caril spent part of the night in the stolen vehicle. The next morning, they entered an affluent area of Lincoln and approached the home of businessman C. Lauer Ward. Inside were Ward's wife, Clara, and the family's housekeeper, Lillian Fenkel. Charles gained entry and took control of the residence. Caril entered later. What followed was another sequence of killings. Clara Ward, C. Lauer Ward, and Lillian Fenkel were all murdered. The precise responsibility for each death became disputed because Charles accused Caril of committing some of the violence, while Caril denied killing anyone. Charles's changing accounts make it dangerous to repeat every accusation as fact. What is certain is that the couple remained at the home long enough to take food, money, and clothing. Robert Jensen's stolen car was left in the garage. Charles attempted to disguise his red hair by darkening it with shoe polish. Then he and Caril departed in the Ward's black Packard. The Ward killings changed the scale of the public response. 3 people had been murdered in a respected family's home. A distinctive vehicle was missing. Other bodies were being discovered. Investigators were beginning to connect the scenes. The danger was no longer hidden inside one house. It was moving across the state. By now, Charles was selecting victims based on opportunity. Some knew him. Others had never met him. Some were young. Others were elderly. Some were working. Others were at home. There was no single type of person who could assume they were safe. That unpredictability created panic. Authorities searched for the Packard while reports spread across radio and television. Residents armed themselves. Parents worried about sending children outside. The Nebraska National Guard assisted as the manhunt intensified. Amid that fear, the victims risked becoming numbers. They were not. Robert Culvert had been working when an ordinary dispute cost him his life. Velda and Marion Bartlett were parents, attempting to protect a teenage daughter. Betty Jean was 2 years old. August Meyer opened his property to someone he knew. Robert Jensen and Carol King tried to help strangers. Clara and Laura Ward were attacked in their own home. Lillian Fenkel was at work. Each death represented a separate family, separate relationships, and a future. The apparent plan was to continue toward Washington State, where one of his brothers lived. But the black Packard was becoming too recognizable. Near Douglas, Charles saw Merle Collison sleeping in his Buick beside the highway. Who had obtained guns, maps, ammunition, and multiple stolen vehicles, was temporarily defeated by an unfamiliar control inside a car. That delay allowed Joe Sprinkle to arrive. Sprinkle stopped because he believed he was helping stranded motorists. When he discovered Merle's body, he stopped several miles east of town and surrendered. Accounts from the time suggested that Charles may have believed he had been seriously wounded, although the injuries from the glass were relatively minor. He had also exhausted the ammunition available for one of his weapons. The arrest ended the immediate danger. It did not end the confusion. For the families, the legal process could provide accountability. It could confirm responsibility and impose punishment. It could not return a child, parent, partner, or friend. Charles became the name remembered by history. That is common in major criminal anger, fascination with weapons, and a belief that other people were responsible for his failures. The most serious warning was not his appearance or difference. Her family opposed the relationship. Charles treated their boundaries as a task. Before we close the file, return to the question from the beginning. Was Caril Ann Fugate a